Good morning. How's everyone doing? Gonna go ahead and get started. Jesus, help me to believe that you can accomplish anything through my life. Help me to believe the best about me. And help me to believe what you believe about me. All right. It's probably one of the best things you could say in the morning, I think. Could pretty much set your mindset. But also, again, this turns into becoming a normal way of thinking. So, I'm going to continue in John chapter 2, verse 13. John chapter 2, verse 13. Reading from the ESV, English Standard Version. Okay, here we go. The Passover of the Jews was at hand, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. In the temple, he found those who were selling oxen and sheep and pigeons, and the money changers sitting there. And making a whip of cords, he drove them all out of the temple with the sheep and oxen. And he poured out the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. And he told those who sold the pigeons, "Take these things away. Do not make my Father's house a house of trade." His disciples remembered that it was written, "Zeal for your house will consume me." So the Jews said to him, "What sign do you show us for doing these things?" Jesus answered them, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." The Jews then said, "It has taken 46 years to build this temple, and will you raise it up in 3 days?" But he was speaking about the temple of his body. When therefore he was raised from the dead, his disciples remembered that he had said this, and they believed the scripture and the word that Jesus had spoken. So, now, when he was in Jerusalem at the Passover feast, many believed in his name when they saw the signs that he was doing. But Jesus, on his part, did not entrust himself to them because he knew all people and needed no one to bear witness about man, for he himself knew what was in man. Okay, we're going to stop right there. May read that part tomorrow. But what's going on here? Why did Jesus go on into the temple and begin to seemingly destroy it? Well, what was happening is that at that time, there was actually two different places of the temple. And in the temple, what they were doing, they were selling things and saying, well, you need these things as a means for worship unto God. And there's a lot of history behind it. Don't have time to get into it. But the bottom line is that they were selling things and telling people that you need this in order to have a worship experience with God. Without this, God's not going to accept you, which was totally wrong. And it ticked Jesus off. And that's why he went in and started turning stuff over because, keyword, they had made what they were doing about money. And they had made their worship unto God about the money. And again, it ticked Jesus off, made him very mad. So just FYI, if you want to know what Jesus thinks about that, you just saw it. He went in and he tore a whole temple up. But then he makes another statement and he says, destroy this temple. Now you got to look at this from their perspective, because at that time, nobody had ever made a statement like that, because every culture, including the Jews, you had Jews, Greeks, Egyptians. If you've been to Egypt or seen Egypt, you've seen why they build these big pyramids and things like that. Well, these are things that they build as temples to their God. And that's the reason they're so big and they're so, they have a lot of detail to them, because they're building it, and to them, it is the actual house of their God. Well, Jesus makes a revolutionary statement. He said, destroy this temple, but he's calling himself, his body, a temple of the living God. Nobody in any history or culture had ever said that before Jesus had made that statement. So it threw a lot of the religious folk off, even his own disciples, and they didn't really understand it until after he had raised from the dead. And so here's the takeaway from that, is that God has moved addresses. He doesn't reside inside a building with four walls, but he resides inside people. And so it's more important that you understand that God resides in you versus you going to a house where people think he still resides. So that's all I have time for today. Remember, you are loved.